morning and welcome to the 14th Annual Girls Incorporated Science Festival. I'm Lauren Gonzalez and I've been involved in Girls Inc. San Antonio for a year. Today I'm going to be talking with District 7 Councilwoman Anna Sandoval. And fun fact for those who might not know, our Councilwoman has several academic degrees in STEM. Hi Councilwoman, thank you so much for being here with us. Can you start off by talking about how you became interested in studying in the STEM field and how your educational background has shaped your career journey?
Sure. It's a good thing we have 20 minutes to talk about this because that's a long story. But first of all, I want to say good morning to everyone and thank you, Lauren, for your invitation and for this conversation with you. I know we're going to have a great time. And to those of you participating, I want to say I am so proud of you for doing this on a Saturday, even when things are tough with this COVID-19 situation that we have. You should be extremely proud of yourselves, and it sounds like you are on your way to being successful women. So yeah, let me tell you about when I started being interested in science. The truth is, I was always pretty good at math in middle school. And we had some good math teachers who would like notice who were the students that were catching on very quickly and had potential to learn more. So they would take us aside, and one of my teachers gave me a workbook for Algebra 1 in middle school, and some middle schools offer Algebra 1, mine didn't, but I was able to do it. She gave me like a student assistant period, you know, like to grade papers, but the truth is she never made me work that way. She would only make me work in terms of learning. So she gave me a workbook to go through by myself, and that's how I learned algebra in middle school. So she was extremely supportive and encouraged me to look into the field of engineering because she knew, I think her nephews had gone into that field, and she knew there's a lot of opportunity for someone whose parents weren't necessarily educated, right? Like my mom went to the 3rd grade. My dad finished school, and so he was considered the scholar of the family. So for people like me to actually get somewhere in life and end up, you know, having a much higher quality of life than what I was experiencing as a child. So I believed everything she told me. When she said I could be that I could be an engineer, I believed it. And when she said that was a good career choice, I took her advice. So I went on to high school and also continued to love math. I was very blessed that I had teachers who encouraged me. And another thing I was really blessed to have was my older sister, who was 2 years ahead, was also really good at math, but she would teach me what she learned. And then I would be like a little bit ahead of everyone in my class because my sister helped me out.
Right.
So, and that started since before I went to school. When she went to school to kindergarten, she learned English and she came home and she taught it to me. So I was very lucky to have her. But at that point, in high school, I started taking chemistry and I loved it. So I decided to major in chemical engineering when I was at MIT. After that, I focused on the chemical side of air pollution. I worked for several years in something that we call air pollution control. But the truth is, I didn't end up working on formulas and numbers. I worked more with people who were affected by air pollution in their community. You may have heard the term environmental justice. I worked with environmental justice communities, so people who were in very dire economic situations. Maybe they lived in public housing, but they lived right next to a port where there were ships. So this was in California, where there were ships burning very dirty oil while they were unloading lots of cargo. So I think for me, work like that, my technical background allowed me to step into those roles. And then by really seeing the human side of things, I learned so much that to be honest with you, I did not learn in college. I was very busy taking math and science courses, and in fact, I went to something that's called a technical institute. It's not a regular university, so you don't take all the liberal arts courses that you might take at, say, UT Austin. So for me, once I was out in the workforce, it was a very educational experience and certainly influenced my decision to serve the public eventually as a council person like I do today.
Thank you so much. That's actually really cool how it worked out. So I have a few questions to ask. I know we have like a short amount of time, but these are very informational questions. How has your education and previous work helped you lead and advise as a city councilwoman?
Oh, so actually, in a number of ways, the city of San Antonio right now and our county is technically not in compliance with air quality standards that are put forth by the federal government. They're health-based standards. So there is some work we need to do to monitor our air quality. So in terms of the people who serve on the city council, I'm the person who watches what our staff is doing and makes some suggestions about other things we can do. And certainly staff is knowledgeable about it, but on the council, I'm the one who weighs in on that. Right now, we are experiencing a worldwide health crisis, and that's another issue that I try to be very involved in. Certainly, the mayor is our lead. We're in a state of emergency, so he's the figurehead for the city. But I actually have a degree in public health. So after I worked in air pollution control for a number of years, I went back to school. In fact, I turned 40 at Harvard, and I did not expect that's where I was going to have my 40th birthday, and that I was going to be at school with like kids who were 22 years old. I went back to school and I got a master's in public health in something called environmental epidemiology. And epidemiology is the study of how disease spreads in the population. And sometimes you'll see that certain types of population, so youth, elderly, people of certain ethnicities are more likely to get a certain disease or more likely to have a certain outcome. So right now, what we see is that when elderly people are infected with COVID-19, they are more likely to pass away or to have really severe consequences. So environmental epidemiology is how our environment, stressors in our environment like pollution, can also create disease in the population. So I went back, I studied that, and that was the last degree I got before I became a council person. Not that I'm planning on getting very many more degrees, but it feels like there's a lot of them. And so the knowledge from that really, I think, made it very easy for me to want to learn about COVID-19 and how it's spreading. So I'm really involved. I also chair a committee called Community Health. So we also give advice to the city on some things we would like to see in terms of how we work with the community to protect their health.
Thank you. I think this is a really important question. As a female leader, what has been your most significant barrier in your career?
Okay. There's a lot of them. No, just kidding. Like I said, I would say for every barrier that I've had, I've probably had 3 things working in my favor, right? Like how my sister helped me out with math. Growing up from kindergarten to high school, my best friend lived next door. She was a really smart girl, so we would do all our homework together. So that also helped me overcome a lot of barriers. Like we were the smartest kids in school and we were girls, right? Like, so all this stuff about girls not being good at math, like I did not experience that growing up in high school or middle school. It was the guys who wouldn't do anything. It was the girls who were really smart.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You're like, yes, I know what that's like. I'm sure everyone who's watching this knows what that's like. But in terms of barriers, I would say, I mentioned to you how my parents had less education than I did. So when it was time for me to decide where to go to college, they weren't excited about me going far away to school. I wanted to go to MIT because I'd heard it was the best engineering school there was. And for them, that was very scary, to have their daughter so far from home. So I think for me, that was an emotional barrier that I had to overcome. Clearly it had consequences because today, I moved back to San Antonio and I live right next door to my parents. So I don't know if it was guilt or if it's because I really love being with my family, but I'm here. So that was one thing, obviously overcame it. Something else is that here in San Antonio, when I did move back to San Antonio, is I wasn't really plugged in to different networks, right? So I was looking for a job in the health field. I wanted to be an environmental epidemiologist. And I wasn't quite sure where to look or how to look for that job, even though I was already 40 something years old. So that took me a while. And I ended up working at the School of Public Health on environmental health research there. I was very lucky. And what it made me think about is, why don't we have a network for college students who graduated high school in San Antonio, but then they went away and they want to come back home, but they don't know where the opportunities are. Like, we don't want to lose those people. This should always be their home. We should always be willing to welcome them. So I started a program called Project Come Home. And this year was going to be our first year. We're going to have internships for college students. Of course, coronavirus came up. So we ended up only doing one internship, but God willing, next year we'll be back on track, welcoming those students back home with an internship.
That is amazing. Thank you so much. Maybe I'll look into that.
Yeah.
I do want to come home for some of my life after college. Thank you so much. What is some advice you can share with young women entering a male-dominated profession such as a STEM field?
So I went to MIT, and it was about 60% male undergraduate when I was there. I ended up being in a field, chemical engineering, that had probably more women than men. So I think something that's really important is work together with the other women who are there, because then you don't feel like you're in the minority, and there is strength in numbers. And support one another. There's no need to compete. They say MIT is very competitive. No, my God, no. Everyone was like, here's my homework. What questions do you have? Like, we all wanted to see each other get through it. So I would say have a good network of women with you and work together and support one another.
Thank you. What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders?
We're counting on you I know, to solve pandemic crises, to solve climate change. But number one, before I give you advice, I want to tell you, I really want to hear from you guys. I think you have an untarnished perspective of all the potential this world has. And sometimes as older people, we forget that, right? We've had so many barriers and challenges. We're like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. So number one, speak up. Let your voices be heard. Always register to vote and vote. I didn't vote when I was in college, and I didn't vote early on in graduate school because I didn't feel like I was going to be there forever. Like, I didn't think I should be weighing in on decisions. And as a result, I didn't follow the current events. So, wherever you are is your home, right? Even if it's going to be temporary, that's your home. And I think you have a responsibility to know what's going on around you. And now I'm more than making up for it, trust me, in this job. So, and in addition to voting, find out who's running for office and support them. I would absolutely not be where I am today without all of the women who helped me get here. So I'm so grateful for them. And, if you want to think about it, run for office, but that's a whole other conversation we can have later about how you prepare for that. But certainly be aware of who's running for office. Keep in touch with the people that you meet. It can be hard to do, especially if you move around, but at the end of the day, that's, you can have a wall of awards, you can have a list of degrees, but it's really the friends and the contacts that you have that will help you continue to do things in the future. So that, and above all, be true to yourself. do what you believe in and what you love.
Thank you. I have another question. Part of your job, is being in front of people and speaking to them and hosting events to do, video interviews or what have you. How do you prepare and to be in front of the spotlight? Does this come naturally to you?
Okay, so this is another thing where I was actually very, very lucky. I was born, no, just kidding. Of course I was born, but I was a little goofy and awkward, but I like talking to people. Some people are very outgoing, like my older sister was shy, but I was the one that would come and greet the guests whenever we had people come over to the house, and I'd be like, oh, can I bring you some water? And I don't know, my mom just taught me that since I was little. And it could be that, my older sister, she learned English when she was older, whereas I learned it a little bit younger because she taught it to me. But number one, I think naturally I was more outgoing. But the real thing where I was very lucky is that in high school, I joined mariachi, and I wanted to play guitar and be in the back, but they needed violin players, and I had played viola in like elementary school. So they were like, here, just take a violin and play the violin. And so what happens when you play the violin in a mariachi is you're in the front row. And they also make you sing songs. So I'm not saying that I didn't like it. I did. I absolutely loved it. But that came with getting to be comfortable in front of people at weddings, at quinceañeras. Eventually, I got a job at what you know now is Six Flags Fiesta Texas. When it first opened, it was a musical theme park. And I was like a strolling musician, and I would, play songs for the people who walked into the park. So I think that really helped me shed a lot of stage fright. Don't get me wrong, I still get really nervous, and it depends who I'm talking to, of course. But it's always, honestly, for me, it's always easier to talk to a group of women than to talk to lots of older men. But that's I prepare by thinking about what I want to say, and I try not to say too many different things because then you go all over the place. So think about maybe 2 or 3 points you want people to walk away with, and then focus on those. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. What my last question I have is, who inspired you and why?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think the people who encouraged me along the way were definitely helpful and inspirational. So my older sister, she always did really well in school, and I wanted to be, like her. My teacher, my math algebra teacher in middle school was also a great inspiration. I would have never gone to MIT if she hadn't taken me aside to teach me. And I didn't realize this at the time, not until I was much older, but my mom has been a huge role model for me. Like, my mom has had so many challenges in her life, and she is never like depressed about it, and she's just such a hard worker, and she's always got something that she's looking forward to. My mom just turned 78, and she's never had like her hip break. God, knock on wood. She hasn't had a stroke. She hasn't had cancer. She hasn't had a heart attack. I'm very, very blessed, but she's just always learning and always doing, and I want to be like my mom. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think that is all the questions I have for today. But Councilwoman Sandoval, thank you so much for chatting with me today, and thank you for your work as being on City Council. Thank you to our viewers. Please stay tuned in for the next session.
Mm-hmm.